And with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment, segment 3. I believe this is Phoebe, all you, with a wardrobe change. Let's go.
Well, yes. So this is the MSN article, and we're discussing Nasser Mohammed, who's a Qatari born, now USA based doctor who claimed asylum in USA because of the persecution that he would have faced had he returned. And he highlights some very interesting things about Qatar as a country and how sports washing is taking place in Qatar under the face of David Beckham and FIFA. And he raises that you need to be careful if you're going to watch the FIFA World Cup in Qatar as somebody who doesn't understand that country, because it's pretty damn scary. He describes things like, well, secret police in chat rooms, floggings of people in public, jail time. And it's really quite scary that the Association Football World Cup is going to be hosted there. And this is just a long line of sports washing that's been happening. And for those of you who don't know about the wonderful world of association football, when FIFA awarded this, they were probably the most corrupt organization on the planet. So, yeah.
After the Catholic Church, you mean?
Oh, no, they were far worse.
You sure?
Yeah.
News to me.
I mean, the former head of FIFA was carted out of a hotel and hauled before a Swiss court on corruption charges because he was taking brown envelopes under a door. And this is not an organization that takes morals seriously, shall we say?
And the Catholic Church does. But go ahead, Cynthia.
No, but it's always a difficult discussion to mix sport and politics. Recently, France has played several games, and on every interview, Didier Deschamps was asked about this very specific topic. Are you going to boycott the World Cup in Qatar? And his answer was always the same. I'm a football coach. I don't do politics. And when you think about it, it can only come from the players. But yeah, what whitewashing or sport washing in this case is very, very strong in Qatar. They've been doing this in many sports, like in handball, like they bought and they own Paris Saint-Germain, the club of the French capital. Yeah, there's been a lot of death in building those stadiums over there, those overheated and acid now stadiums. It's a ecological disaster. It's a political disaster. It's a human rights disaster. This should never have happened. Never.
Yeah, I do want to jump in and say that I think that this gentleman is extremely courageous for coming out and speaking his truth. And I'm glad he now lives in a place where we are not good on LGBTQIA plus issues in the United States by any stretch of the imagination, as we've seen currently in this episode alone. But the fact that he could face lashings or imprisonment in his native country is just terrible. And I think it's important to look at the perspective of the fact that we're not great, but I mean, lashings and imprisonment is another thing. So yeah, the fact that he lost so much to do this and the fact that he will give so much courage and strength to those who are like him and definitely need it, I think that is amazing.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Nasser Mohammed. Quite brave to be able to speak your truth and also stand up for LGBTQIA plus people, and being so brave to actually call out wrong when it's happening. I am flabbergasted that FIFA would continue even after the corruption issues, like Phoebe was alluding to, that they would still push these games. I believe that it was awarded that they were going to do the World Cup in Russia, specifically, who has a history of issues with the LGBTQ community. And then Qatar in 2015 after massive protests. And so they held the Russia hosted in 2018, I want to say, and then they still wanted to push it in Qatar without really, even though that they were saying that, oh, we support this community, but I don't understand how you can say that without throwing up per se. I know that's like a pretty, vivid visual.
Sorry, just jump in there. They don't care.
Go ahead.
Sepp Blatter, who used to run FIFA, used to be the president of FIFA. He said the way how you can encourage more viewers to watch women's football is have the women wear tighter shorts because the female players are pretty. He also went onto the record and then said, gay fans who go to Qatar don't have sex. Those were his exact words. Don't have sex in Qatar. Two fans going there. This is a man who's so out of touch.
Well, I was going to say, to a caveat to the previous segment, remember Greg Abbott said after they criminalized abortion that when people were asking him about, well, what about happens if like someone gets raped? He said, oh, rape won't happen here. It just won't. Yeah, that's what he said.
That just shows you how out of touch. Oh no, I completely believe you. Nothing shocks me anymore, but just fuck Greg Abbott. Jesus Christ.
Fuck
guys, this is patriarchy at its best. Let's keep it 100 right now, okay? This is patriarchy at its best when you see it at the behest of these particular organizations and with the intersection of capitalism, because FIFA is like, oh, well, we're going to watch and we're going to continue to go ahead and push these particular games because we're trying to make money, right? Advertising, people watching, pay-per-view, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
but it's not capitalism, though. It's just outright corruption. It's just outright corruption. It's not capitalism. It's just 100% corruption.
Corruption, capitalism.
They ain't the same thing, but I know where you're going.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but with any of those things, like capitalism in of itself has a way, especially without regulation, to be corrupt. Let's just keep it a buck, okay? And in this particular case, even though you have an outcry from people who are into football, I'm saying this for the people across the pond and everywhere but the United States. I know y'all call it football, we call it soccer. Go figure. But this is what we are seeing at this particular juncture when we're talking about like people being able to completely be blind to what it is to actually practice human rights. Because this is what we're seeing right now. And even though, like, I know I don't have a dog in the fight because I'm not a football watcher and, I'm a cisgender woman, but I still believe in humanism and treating people with dignity and respect because they're human. And when I was even reading this particular piece and seeing that they were able to even, like, award these particular countries who have major human rights violations to actually, say, okay, well, we're going to do some football watching and call it a day. It really grinded my gears. But I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to give it back to the panelists. I'm going to first, Phoebe, you chime in, then August, and then Cindy. Yeah.
But FIFA aren't the only organization doing this. I mean, you just got to look at the IOC. The IOC arguably started this in 2008 with giving the Summer Olympics to China. China, one of the worst human rights abusers on the planet, that is currently engaged in genocide against Uyghur Muslims in Shanxi province, which is a former country of Turkestan, which they invaded and annexed. And then we have the nonsense going on in Saudi Arabia with the Live Golf tournament, which is destroying the PGA as we know it. And as Cindy said, Saudi Arabia got in the game in England. They purchased Newcastle United Football Club and are now pumping sovereign wealth into that club. This is not something new, but it is something that we have to be very, very aware of. I mean, last weekend, I was watching Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk in Saudi Arabia on my television because I'm a boxing fan. I went down to my pub. I was not going to be paying for that, but I'm a boxing fan and I wanted to watch the world heavyweight boxing, but it was taking place in Saudi Arabia. Why isn't this taking place in Vegas? Why isn't this taking place in London? Why is it that these countries can buy a trip to the laundrette, or laundromat as you Americans call it, and get their reputations laundered? But some stains are a lot more difficult to get rid of. And chopping up journalists is one of those stains that's really difficult to get rid of.
That's a mouthful there. August, I don't know how you're going to follow that, but go ahead, girl.
I'm going to go towards the very positive aspect of this and say that, you know, I've always seen soccer, football as a very inclusive and, I mean, a safe spot for people. And it's a way that the world can come together. And I think that stuff like this is just abhorrent. And I think it divides us. And I think it is not challenging the fact that these countries are committing terrible atrocities and they're just kind of shrugging it off like it doesn't matter. And I just think everyone should be involved. Everyone should be included. People should feel safe watching, going. It is probably one of the most played sports in the entire world. And these events are such big events. I wish we could all be inclusive. And I mean, it's wishful thinking, but I wish it was better.
Nothing wrong with wishful thinking. But I'm going to give the final thoughts to Cindy. Cindy, take us home the best you can.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how Qatar responds to this event, because on one hand, there's the possibility that the local LGBTQ groups try to organize themselves to voice their opinions during this event. So maybe there's going to be a very, very strong repressive movement. On the other hand, what will happen inside the games? Supporters might try to send messages. So are they going to be hidden? What are the cameras? How are they going to manage this? I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they respond to this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that, should be watched. I'm always interested in like how countries, governments, especially when such a big stink, without, using proper terminology. Unfortunately, I don't have the verbosity of Phoebe Rose, but it's really interesting on how these particular governments would actually respond when you're seeing such voices that are coming out to saying that, you have human rights violations and it's a big problem, but you are putting your hat in the ring in order for you to host these games where football, like you mentioned, August, is like the most watched and played sport in the entire world. And sports in of its way is supposed to be a way for people to come together, to have like a friendly competition with one another, and also rally around who we like to be fans of. And but it's unfortunate that in this particular case, that something that should show a coming together of the world with the World Cup being played is being overshadowed by this gross violation of human rights.